How do? My name is Andrew Hancock and I am a VMware technical architect from Yorkshire in the United Kingdom. I have worked with VMware since their birth in 1998, so that has been over 24 years I've been working with the VMware product catalogue. Some of my close colleagues may say, if you cut Andy in half these days, it reads VMware like a stick of rock from Blackpool Pleasure Beach. I have now written 130 articles and recorded 10 hours of VMware vSphere videos for Experts Exchange and received 41 Experts Exchange awards over the last 10 years working with the Experts Exchange community. I am currently the overall #1 point earner in the Hall of Fame at Experts Exchange. I am honoured to have been accepted into the VMware vExpert program since 2011 and more recently a VMware vExpert Pro for the last 3 years.
How do, and welcome back to another Hancock's VMware half hour. What I'm going to show you today is an automated vSphere and vSAN 8 lab deployment script that was written and developed by William Lamb, and I'm sure that he needs no introduction, but if you're not aware of who he is and his blog, I'll put this in the description so that you can actually have a little look at everything that he blogs about. Say he's a senior staff solution architect working in the VMware cloud team at VMware, and he's actually developed an automated method of deploying vSphere 8 and vSAN 8 nested. And as I touched on in the last video, we were having some discussions in one of the vExpert webinars that we had about home labs, and as UK electricity pricing has risen, and I'm currently paying 41 pence a kilowatt hour when that used to be about 10 pence a kilowatt hour, electricity costs in building labs are getting very expensive. And it was one of the vExperts who was giving the webinar, and I forget his name, apologies, shoot me, that actually sort of kind of turned around and said it's about time really that we really started having a little look at nested virtualization as a mechanism to deploy labs for testing, not production but for testing. So you know, if you have got the correct resources, the right resources in CPU, memory and storage, on a high-powered desktop or a high-powered laptop or even a standalone single server, you can use this script to deploy it. Now, I won't lie, this has taken me all week to get working properly, and I still need to really discuss a few issues with William, and I'll probably maybe open some PRs on GitHub and we can discuss some of the issues that I've seen running the script, and I'm hoping that I can sort of kind of show you some of these golden nuggets if you actually fall into the same issue as myself. And I've tried lots of different environments, and even today in actually trying to set this up on my laptop I came across another issue. So excuse me, we're gonna dial in. We're gonna RDP remote desktop to my other production laptop where the PowerShell core seems to behave correctly. So I'll show you that. So without further ado, let's start. So we need to go to, if you look at his webpage, you will find that all William's bits and bobs are published on GitHub. There's a couple of prerequisites that we need. We need to download the vCenter server appliance. We need to download the nested ESXi OVA that he's developed. The vCenter server appliance 8 is a link back to VMware. What we also need to do as well is that we need to extract the ISO as well, and I'll just show you what the script looks like. So again, we've got a password. That isn't actually the right password, but not going to worry. I'm not going to execute on this machine. So you need to basically fill in some details. Obviously, it explains all this here. You need to basically fill in your vCenter server IP address or FQDN. You need to supply the username and the password for that. You need to specify the location of the files to deployment. You need to specify the IP addresses of the nested hosts. You need to specify the amount of CPUs, cores, memory, the caching vSAN disk and the capacity disks. Specify what sort of environment that you actually want in terms of the deployed VCSA, and so it's self-explanatory. I've not changed a lot. For our lab here, again, you know, we're on the 192.168.182 EE VMware lab here, which is a 182. So I've basically just changed to 182.181 for ESXi 1, and I've basically put a V in front, but I'm just going to basically go back to that. So the only thing really that I've actually changed, obviously, is the IP addresses, and your IP addresses will be for your lab. I've also changed, put an IP address in there for VCSA, which is 182.180. I'm not using DNS. I'm trying to use the script without as many changes as possible, really, just to show you. So 192.168.182.180. Not going to change any of the passwords. Okay. You need to ensure that your data center names match, and your cluster names match, and your data store matches. So we're deploying to the EE training data center. So if I just go back here, our data center is called the EE training data center in the EE cluster, and we're deploying to nested lab data store. So you've got to make sure that those are right, otherwise you get an error message. Our gateway on the LAN here is 192.168.182.1, and our DNS is 192.168.182.254. I'm going to leave the NTP server. We do have one, but I'm just going to leave that. I'm not going to change the password. I'm going to use William Lamb's primp.industries.local domain, and I'm not going to change anything else. And I think it turns around and says, obviously, do not edit below here. So that's what the script looks like. You will need PowerShell core, not PowerShell, to run this script. And you will also need to ensure that you've installed the VMware PowerCLI modules. So without further ado, keep saying that, I'm going to bob on to our script, which is actually on my production laptop. And I'm going to just execute that in PowerShell. So that's the log. I don't need the log. I need. So if you can read that, it just confirms that the nested ESX image path to the OVA is correct. The VCSA image path is correct. I have extracted it already. The vCenter address is 192.168.182.136. That's the vCenter server that's running on bare metal, that's going to manage the VCSA1 that we're deploying, and also all the nested ESXi's as well. So we're going to do 3 ESXi VMs. You can do more. You know, you can do 4, 5, 6, or 7. The script will take care of that. 4 vCPUs, 10 gig, 8 gig, 40 gig. The IP addresses are listed there, the gateways, the DNS, NTP, syslog, etc. So, if we're happy with all that, it turns around and tells me that we're going to use 415 gig of storage and 144 gig of storage. So, are we happy with that? And I'm just going to say yes. And the magic starts to happen. In summary, it'll deploy 3 ESXi nested hosts, ESXi 8. Then it will deploy VCSA 8. Then it will create a VApp move all the ESXi hosts into the vApp, and also the VSA1. Then it will disconnect from your production vCenter, and then it will basically add all the hosts to the new VCSA, and then basically it will configure a VDS, and then basically it will enable vSAN, and it will create all the vSAN disk groups, and then it'll be done. Now, depending upon the speed of your infrastructure, this can take between 30 minutes and 60 minutes to deploy. And it's something I wanted to show you if you want to do things quickly. Personally, I don't usually rely on scripts to do things, to build labs, unless I'm building them and tearing them down quickly. And I think I spoke to a couple of people the other day about this, and some people turned around and said they really like to get hands-on when they deploy labs, so they can see the bits and the bobs, and they can see the configuration as they go. But if you want to rapidly deploy vSphere 8 and vSAN in a lab quickly to do some testing, have a little look at William's script. And in all the time that I've actually been basically meddling with this for the last week, I probably could have built a vSAN vSphere 8 quicker, but I'm sure that's maybe some issues that we have here on the various laptops, PowerShell, PowerShell Core, who knows. So I'm going to pause this, and I'm going to come back, because I've still not bottomed out an issue that I've seen with the deployed ESXi servers, and I don't know why. For some strange reason, what I've seen and discovered is the networking doesn't seem to respond on the management network in the ESXi host. I don't know if it's the OVA, I don't know if it's the configuration of ESXi itself. I've seen this on more than one environment. This is the fourth environment that I'm checking again today, and I saw exactly the same thing earlier. So this is one of the PRs that I need to open with William to have a little look at this. And that's just a beekeeping tweet that's come through from my company, not my company, colleague's company, Abello Beekeeping in Dunnington. So a shout out to Damien, but I'm sure that he won't be watching a vSphere 8 and vSAN deployment video unless he's got some spare time and he's not actually beekeeping. So as you can see, these are gradually being deployed and powered on, and if I just go back to our environment, then you can see here we've got ESXi, ESXi-1, and we've got vESXi-2, and we've got ESXi-3, which is still being deployed. That one's been powered on, and that one's been powered on. So I'm just going to wait for the third one to be powered on, and then I'm going to show you. I'm just going to run a command prompt, and I'll just quickly show this. And then I'll pause the video and I'll wait for ESXi-3 to be powered on whilst it's still... Okay, so it's just deploying the last ESXi virtual machine. One other thing I forgot to mention, that you will need to have clustering enabled on your production environment, and you will need to have HA, and you will need to have DRS enabled as well. It's just a couple of things. I found that if I didn't have them enabled, it wouldn't actually basically create the vApp correctly, and it all started failing. So okay, it's just about to, okay, so we're starting to deploy VCSA. So no need to pause the video yet. So as you can see, the IP address 192.168.182.181 is what we specified, and oddly it is okay. It's still starting up. Okay, it's just finished. Okay, you can actually see there quite clearly that 192.168.182.181 is been allocated correctly. Allocated in terms of the PowerShell script, put those settings into deployment. But if we try to ping anything from the host, it's not talking. Should be able to ping 192.168.182.1 because that's the gateway on the network, and it should be able to ping 192.168.182.254, which is the DNS on the same network. So it can ping. Obviously I can't ping it here either. I have found, and this doesn't seem to be detrimental to the script if you do it now, if you select network restore options, restore network settings, so this just restores the networking to default. And if we go back and configure the management network again, IP address, and I'm going to do 182, so sorry, it should be 181. This is host 1. Yeah, this is ESXi-1. So 192.168.182.1. Okay, so all I've done there is I've just restored networking settings. Doesn't seem to be detrimental to the script, and something really that I need to talk to William about, as he has any ideas what's actually going on with the OVA that he's deploying that doesn't seem to be working. I did try and reach out to some other vExperts and I said, hey, anybody deployed this? Anybody seen any issues? So I can repeat that on ESXi number 2. So I'm going to launch a web console. Again, you can see there that it says it's 182. If I go down here, stop that ping. Okay, we can't actually reach that host, so I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to go network restore. I'm going to restore the network settings, which basically is just going to restore the defaults on the vSwitch 0. I'm then going to go back to configure network manager. One thing that does puzzle me, and I'm not quite sure whether or not you noticed, and I saw this earlier, that DHCP seems to grab the same IP address for all the hosts, which indicates that it's maybe the same MAC address? Don't know. So 192.168.182.182. Yes. For shits and giggles I can do that. So the host can ping, and if we go back to our command prompt down here, and we're happily pinging away there as well. Launch web console. Anyway, so good bit of troubleshooting this. Shouldn't have to do this. I don't know why. I have actually had a little look at the internals of the ESXi host and the way that it's actually set up. I couldn't see anything obvious. It's possible that I missed something. So not quite fully automated, but A3. What I might do is that when we get this video published, I'll just turn around and say, hey, tell you what, William, have a little look at my vid. What do you think's going on here? Okay, so we can ping from the host to the outside world, across the network, etc. Not going to worry about that failure of the host name at the end there. Get rid of that. Go to the command box. Prompt 3.2. Okay, so our 3 deployed nested hosts are all got networking correctly. This puzzled me a bit because later on, of course, and if we go back to our deployment over here, it's still deploying the VCSA. It puzzled me because, of course, it creates all the ESX machines, powers them on, deploys VCSA, but then, of course, later it can actually add them to VCSA, so all fails horribly. Okay, so it's 20 to 4. I'm looking at the... That's a bit strange. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I'm looking at... it says 3:39 on that laptop and 15:45 on this laptop. So we're 6 minutes astray somewhere across the LAN here. Probably doesn't help. So I'm going to put this video on pause, and we'll come back when VCSA has been deployed. Like, obviously deployment of VCSA is going to depend on your infrastructure, depends on your laptop, your LAN, your desktop, speed of your hosts data store, our nested lab data store, which actually exists on a Synology NAS over NFS. So that takes a while for it to deploy, and of course, like any VCSA 6.7, 7 or 8, they do seem to take an age, 15 to 30 minutes to initialize before it's actually going to start doing the donkey work of configuring up the VDS, configuring up vSAN, adding all the disk groups and adding all the hosts first. So I'm going to pause this and we'll come back when we're getting nearer the end. So I'll be back shortly. Okay, I'm just going to come back in and I'm going to waffle on a bit. I wanted to keep this video under 30 minutes. It might go over slightly. I just wanted to point out a couple of things. So we've deployed, as you will see, the VCSA OV has been deployed, and it's imported the JSON file, which is a configuration file to configure all those bits and pieces that we specified. And you will see that it does actually seem to start the VMware observability service for a while, and it says failed, and it sits there for quite a long time. Eventually it does a number of restarts, and it will restart again. And as always with VCSA, as I've maintained, when you actually start to see connections, and at the moment it's still not accepting a web interface, but you will see, if you get it at the right time, no healthy upstream, which is sort of kind of, I think we probably agree, is completely normal really for a vCenter server appliance starting up. So you'll see, as I said, I have observed that the observability service is one that fails to start and pauses for a while before eventually it all initializes correctly. And again, you know, we can still ping, so you know, we have got good communications. 192.168.182.180 is VCSA. It is just starting up at the moment, and again, as we've seen before, this does really depend on your underlying storage. If you've got slow underlying storage, it can take 15 to 30 minutes to initialize VCSA correctly, and no doubt VCSA 8, although at the moment I've not really got any evidence to suggest that this appliance could be doing an awful lot more than what it's done before, with all the additional options and functions that are built into vSphere 8. So it probably is a little bit beefier, probably does need a bit more resources. There we go. So no healthy upstream. So we're on the way, which is, of course, we've seen before on previous videos where I've actually stated to you that when you're starting up vCenter server for the first time, don't be too concerned about seeing no healthy upstream. It's just starting all the services. So that's really what I wanted to actually get to. If we go back and look at the script, obviously it's still deploying the VCSA, but obviously the VCSA has been deployed. It's obviously basically just starting up the various services, and eventually you will get the familiar GUI to launch the web client. And of course, while it's initializing, sometimes you may also see the error, the message that turns around and says the web client is initializing, giving you feedback to just be a little bit patient. Just give it a refresh again, and then we're going to have a little chat. So, vSphere 8 released maybe last week, was it, or the week before? Of course, vSphere 6.7. vSphere. That's Siri talking to me. Watch. vSphere 6.7, of course, is end of life as of October 15th of October. So if you're on 6.7, you're end of life. You really need to consider moving up to 7.0 at least. Would I go to 8 at the moment? Certainly not. Certainly we've got clients that have got vSphere 8 in proof of concept at the moment, under test in labs, but I haven't seen anybody at the moment upgrade production to vSphere 8, and I think it's sort of kind of safe to say that a lot of people seem to wait for the Service Pack 1 release before they wade in. I think if you're a new greenfield site, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't deploy 8. If you've already got infrastructure, if you're already on 6.7 or 7, I think at the moment I would just, hold fire and wait for all them penguins to jump off that iceberg first before you go. But that's my opinion. So at the moment, I'm finding myself doing an awful lot of 6.7 upgrades. Surprise, surprise, those organisations that have hung on in there. Of course, 7.0 does require new licensing. Your 6.7 licenses will not work with 7.0. But if you're on support and subscription, you should find that you can upgrade from within what used to be called My VMware, but is now VMware Customer Connect. You should find the ability in there to upgrade your licenses to 7.0, and then you can follow all the previous videos that we've done on upgrading to 7.0 and deploying and upgrading to VCSA 7. If you're feeling brave, then yeah, why not jump in and go straight to 8? Let me know how it goes. So we're still waiting for this to initialize. So I think I'm just going to pause, and we'll come back when we actually basically start to see the ability to log into to VCSA. So I'll be back shortly. And he's back. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that no healthy upstream does eventually change to this very, very familiar launch vSphere client. And what I'm expecting is if we actually click launch vSphere client, I suspect I'm probably not being patient enough, and it may actually just sort of come back and turn around and tell us that the web client is initializing, and we've got to wait a little bit more. Okay, services are still being started. I don't see any failures there at the moment, but I don't think that we're done. So I'll just pause this again and I'll come back shortly. Okay, so we have a very familiar VMware vSphere login. So I'm using the SSO account administrator at vSphere local. The password, of course, was specified in the PowerShell script. And I'm going to click login. I still think. Oh, let's click. I still think it's initializing. Okay, I'm wrong. That does look like we're going to get some sort of GUI. Okay, good. Didn't see the web client is initializing that time. Occasionally I do. Maybe just missed it. So here we go. This is what vCenter Server 8 looks like. Immediately you can see that the banner's changed colour. We've now got a orange, yellow, honey colour. I was going to promise I was going to say anything about bees, but anyway, we've got a lovely yellow, orange, honey colour, which also sort of kind of matches the. I've noticed the yellow, orange there. Okay, so there are expired or expiring licenses in your inventory. Is not a surprise. And the plugin has been deployed. Yeah, okay, I'll refresh the browser. So it's good really just to do a quick check to see that we can connect to vCenter server and we can log in, and everything looks correct. If we go back to our deployment, you'll see that it's still saying deploying the VSA, because it hasn't actually basically started doing its configuration yet of creating the data center, creating the cluster, adding the host to the cluster, enabling vSAN, adding the disk groups, and then disconnecting. So that's probably going to start shortly. So we can have a little look here. There's just nothing. This is a completely blank vCenter server infrastructure, obviously based on an IP address. Not something really that I'm a fan of, and I have mentioned before about getting used to using FQDNs and not using IP addresses. You will find it much easier in the future if you do that. If you need to start re-IPing ESXi hosts and moving around, etc. If you're tied to an IP address within vCenter server, then you're going to have to start removing the ESXi host, re-IPing it and re-adding it back, and getting in a real mess if you've got vSAN and VDS and your vCenter server is a little bit specialist or not vanilla. Okay, so I'm just going to basically big X that, get rid of that, and just going to go back and see when this is actually going to start waking up and doing stuff. So at the moment we are waiting for the script to carry on doing its heavy lifting and basically doing everything within vCenter server 8. So I'll just pause and I'll be back shortly. I'm just looking here at the just looking at what's going on in the tasks and events there, and alarms are being created at the moment for vCenter server, which is completely normal, but I'm just waiting to see whether or not that we actually start to see any other configuration taking place from the PowerShell script, which is running in the background there, or waiting on a timer at the moment before it actually basically starts kicking off. So where are we? 33 minutes. So I'll just put this on pause. Okay, so I missed it. It was that quick. Okay, so the script is actually continuing, where it actually creates a vApp and it moves all the ESXi hosts, the nested ESXi hosts, into the same. So you've got a vApp with VCSA number 1, number 2, and number 3, And here you can actually basically see that it's created the vApp. It's moving the nested VMs. It's disconnected from the main vCenter server. It's connected to the new VSA. So if we go over here, then you can actually basically see the heavy lifting happening now. You can see that the data center has been created, datacenter.lab. A cluster has been created called cluster.lab. The hosts 181, 182, 183 are now being added. vSAN configuration is happening. vSphere HA is happening. DRS is happening. And I'll just sort of kind of go back to the script here so you can sort of kind of see script and tasks and events happening all in one. So we've had all the hosts that are added to the cluster. Enable vSAN, disabling vSAN health check because this is nested and technically unsupported. Querying the ESXi host to create the vSAN disk groups, of course, because we've got 2 disks per host, a cache and a capacity disk. And it's now just adding the disk groups. So if really we sort of kind of want to get to a place really where you just want to play with vSAN 8, vSphere 8, 3 hosts, and you don't really get a thrill out of deploying any of this stuff, then yeah, fine. You know, William's done an excellent job here with the script, and I will be using this a great deal. I used to use AutoLab. AutoLab was a thing for a while. Not quite certain whether or not that it's been maintained and for 7 or 8. So I've been looking for something like this for a while, and you know, why reinvent the wheel when William's already done all the heavy work? So thanks, William. Kudos. Oh, and I'll be in touch. I'll send you a link to the video, and you can have a little look at the issues that I've encountered, which could be me. And I'll come back and I'll add some feedback into this video. Okay, so we've added the host to VDS, and we've now disconnected, and the vSphere and vSAN Lab 8 deployment is complete. Now this deployment OVF template here, the cluster lab, has nothing to do with the script. Obviously you can see that it turns around and says that the duration was 51 minutes. Which, if you had a race, I don't know, maybe it's a challenge I put out to another vExpert out there. Can you deploy a lab faster? Manually, not scripted. Can you deploy a lab faster doing it manually than running William's script? So I'll leave that on the floor. Maybe we'll have a race. But anyway, so that deployed OVF into the cluster lab is part of the cluster services appliances that are deployed and powered on. So you can see that powering on as well. So the only way that can actually be powered on is if we've got HA DRS enabled and we've got a vSAN data store. And so we're done with that. So let's just minimize that. We're coming up to 40 minutes, so I'll wrap up quickly. So if I look at data stores, I can see that I've got a vSAN data store. Now, one of the things I noticed earlier, and this really depends on you, some people may just basically run the script, walk away, come back an hour later, it's all done, and then you can log in, rather than babysitting it. But one of the things I did notice when I was looking at it earlier, I was looking for... it's actually done it now. It didn't do that before. It's telling me there to refresh the browser. Before, I was actually looking for the vSAN information under monitor and configure. I couldn't find it, and I was puzzling and thinking, has this changed location in vSphere 8? And then I remembered, it's a plugin. So I actually logged in and logged back out again, and the plugin was deployed. But it does actually tell me here at the time that the plugin has actually been deployed in the background. So if I just refresh without logging out and logging in, I can show you what I mean. Okay, so now we have a vSAN, and we can look at Skyline Health, which actually shows us about the don't show me this again, I don't want to provide any feedback. This actually basically gives you a quick overview of your health of your vSAN cluster. Now obviously at the moment, you know, this is a lab, so there are going to be a few warnings here and there, but one of the things I wanted to have a little look at as well, if you look at configure and you look at disk management, you can actually have a little look at the disk groups that are running on each of the, there we go, so all the disk groups, and look at the cluster objects, and you can see that they're actually basically running across all the hosts. And view disks, so you can actually have a little look at the way that the disk groups have been set up in your vSAN caching disk and your vSAN capacity disk, which of course are specified originally in the script. So that's it. Almost perfect. Apart from that little, I'm just looking here at this certificate issue. Okay, yeah, that's because it's actually picked up an old host name from DNS, dsm-saras-consultant.co.uk, and probably something to do with the certificate, but obviously didn't really seem to cause any issues. But anyway, lots of green, which is what we want, no yellow, no red, and the only little tweak that we had to do along the way is that little networking refresh. If you don't do that, well, if I didn't do that, certainly it was going to add those hosts to the vCenter server. So that's it for this video. I hope that you've enjoyed this. As I say, it has taken me many hours over the last week to deploying this script over and over and over and over again across various labs to understand why it wasn't actually working for me. Your mileage may vary. So again, I will put these links. I'll put William's link to the automated vSphere and vSAN 8 lab deployment script, and you can fetch it from GitHub, and you can download, follow the instructions. If however you have got any feedback or you fall into any issues in deploying it, then you know, please ask a related question down below, and we'll work through it at Experts Exchange. So again, cheers me dears, and come back for the next video, which we'll look at, and we'll probably continue with the vSphere 7 ones, and then we'll start having a little look at vSphere 8 and deployment of vSphere 8 in the old-fashioned way, bare metal, and deployment of vCenter Server 8 in the old-fashioned way. Although, to be honest, if you've looked at all my other articles and you've looked at all my other videos, it's not going to be a great deal of difference, really, to be honest with you. So again, thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure. It's a lovely October's autumn day, because in the last 2 days it's absolutely rained like cats and dogs, and it felt like winter. But today it's absolutely glorious. It's about 17 degrees C outside, and the bees are flying. And I'm not going to mention any more about bees or beekeeping. Anyway, all the best now, and goodbye from me.